When it comes to work ethic, few players were driven quite like Corey Maggette. Corey built his game around his athleticism, and to ensure longevity, he went all in on his fitness. In applying it on the basketball court, his workouts were at one speed and one speed only, and that's game speed. As he tells Penny, that desire to push himself and to dedicate himself to the game started with the influences in his family. His drive enabled Corey to become a standout player at Duke and a cornerstone player in the league for 14 seasons. Now, he still prides himself on his fitness and keeping basketball a cornerstone in his life. This is one you definitely want to take notes on to see just exactly what it takes to train, to dedicate yourself, and the mindset to become a pro. Here's Corey Maggette on the 2 Cents Podcast. Remember, subscribe wherever you get your podcast to catch every episode of 2 Cents as soon as they drop each and every week.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Going to welcome you back to my 2 Cents Podcast. And without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to my man, Corey Maggette. Corey, man, I appreciate you coming on.
What's going on, Penny? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. I remember your career, man. Huge fan. The way you played the game, the way you approached the game. Always one of the most fit, in shape guys. And we just talked about hooping right now at our ages. You said you still hoop, but the recovery time wasn't the same. But you still lift like crazy. So, man, tell me, how's everything going?
Man, everything's going well, man. To be honest, I'm actually at Lifetime Fitness right now.
That's about right. I like that. I love that.
They have a cool little business center where you get to come in and do some business and talk. And, you know, for me, man, it's just been making fitness like a lifestyle for me and staying in shape as much as possible, you know, because I'm, you know, have my kids and they want to run around and get on the court and do all those things. But in general, you know, for me, Penny, man, it's just been just trying to be the best dad I can be and to continue to love the game which has changed both of our lives in so many ways. And, you know, that's why I went into, you know, the analyst work. I do that with the Clippers now, and it's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, you know, if I took a consensus of all the NBA guys that know you personally and say, take a wild guess what Corey did his podcast interview at, they're going to be like, weight room, LA Fitness, or Lifetime Fitness. Like, you got it.
There you got that right.
No doubt about it. You watched your career, man, played at the highest level. We're talking about Bellwood, Illinois. Talk to me about Bellwood.
Well, first of all, Penny, you know all about it. You know, your pops was in that area. I saw your pops so many days at Memorial Park there playing on the outdoor courts. Yeah. And, you know, honestly, man, Bellwood is a small suburban town in Chicago that, you know, if you know Maywood, you probably know Bellwood. And that's where I grew up. You know, my parents grew up in the west side of Chicago and the south side. And, you know, being able to live then back in Bellwood, it was a great experience. And had some great people around there down in that area. And it inspired me to be where you were. You know, I was watching your game and to see, you know, a guy that was basically close to me, close in that area, had the ability to get to that next level.
Yeah, now talk about the guys that you saw at Proviso East. Like, talk about that run.
Man, you know what? It was cool that you had Michael Finley. Now, you know this back in the day when Mike Finley had the Jerry curl juice. And so he used to go to my grandfather's church at the time. And we always got a chance to see Mike, to be around him, to see that school, how Proviso West was so impactful in the city. But not only that, you see a product of, you know, the city that you lived in, the area that you lived in, that it was capable of, you know, basically having greatness, or a guy, you know, getting a scholarship to go to college, and then from there being able to go to the pros. So, you know, to see that, to see Mike Finley, to play against him when I was even in high school, you know this Tim Grover had Hoops the Gym, where all the guys played at, and that gave us a way that, you know, the younger kids had an opportunity to play with the legends, you know, on their court.
Yeah, no, those hoop sessions were great, because I remember in 2001 I was down there with MJ and you guys were in the gym. Man, you had some classic games going on, because we know how crazy MJ is when it comes to competing. And I used to always tell M, man, stop stacking your team, bro, and give me a better team. I used to mess with him and drive him crazy a little bit, but no, those were great times, man. Then let's just talk about your high school journey, man. Tell the people that don't know about your high school journey. Just say from ninth grade up, how'd that go for you?
From ninth grade up, I would just say that it was a great opportunity for me to learn the game of basketball, right? And one of the things that I look at back then was I didn't start out playing basketball. The sports that I did was actually baseball. I ran track, and then from there, uh, I decided to play basketball because I was the biggest guy out there, right? So the Boys and Girls Club was down the street in Bellwood,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of the people said, "Hey, if you ever want to come in there to learn a game of basketball, come here." It was a guy by the name of Pops back then that he was one of our coaches for our baseball team, and they didn't have enough players, and so
Okay.
they said, "Hey, Corey, are you interested in playing basketball?" I'm like, "Pops, man, I've never played basketball in my life." "No, you're big and you can run and you can jump. Just go out there, you see the ball and you grab every single rebound." And and so I remember the first time going out there and I was running with the ball, Penny. I didn't know anything about it. Running with the ball, and Pop said, "Hey, man, you got some potential here because you can jump." Because one play, the ball went up, and I just jumped up and grabbed it almost at the top of the backboard. And he's like, "What? Wait, how did you just do that?" I'm like, "Well, I used to do high jump and long jump, so I was basically just simulating that going to get the ball."
Right.
And after that, man, so I started to go to this gym over in Eisenhower that they had these small clinics that allow people to learn how to play the game of basketball. Again, I wasn't very good, and there was some kids there that were talking about me because I was bad, right? And they would call me like, Curious George that didn't know how to play, and so that just actually sparked a fire in me to work on that game every single day. So the local basketball ball handling clinics that they used to have so many of back growing up, the shooting clinics, just to get exposure at the game of basketball, which led to me, basically hibernating and then coming back out and destroyed all of them. And after that, a guy in Chicago, his name was Larry Butler, asked me to play on one of his AAU teams back then, which got on, played there, played with a couple guys, Quentin Richardson, some fellow Chicagoans, and man, took off. We won AAU Nationals. Went from there, went to Dean Smith camp, got invited to go to Dean Smith camp, and then after that, had the opportunity from ninth grade to 12th grade to go to Fenwick High School, which is in Oak Park, which was honestly, most of the people in Bellwood only went to Proviso West, right? And
Gotcha.
so if I want to go stay, over my grandmother's house that she lived in Maywood, I can go to Proviso East because my mom went to Proviso East too, and we knew Doc Rivers was at Proviso East, Mike Finley, all the tradition there. And so I went a totally different route. Didn't go to any one of those schools and ended up going to Fenwick, which I think was the best decision for me, not only just from a basketball standpoint, but from a diversity standpoint, because here I am from a little area in Bellwood in Chicago where it's predominantly more black individuals than anyone. And so what that school did was it allowed me to have more diversity, uh, to be around people that aren't just like me, but to see how to work and coexist with all of those individuals around. And not only that, it was a great academic school. So it allowed me to push the limits from an academic standpoint in order to get to where I want to go. Because basketball, honestly, Penny, it wasn't like the end all game for me. There wasn't even, I didn't ever think that I would make it to the NBA. It was more about the commitment, the drive, the passion of trying to get better. And that's how I kind of took the approach every day, even through high school.
Yeah, that's unbelievable, man. Honestly, that you had all of that tradition. You said, you know what? I'm not going to go with this tradition. I'm going to make my own lane. And you made your own lane, which led you to Duke. Let's talk about Duke.
Man, it was, the cool thing about it, Coach K, he's from Chicago. He's south side of Chicago. My dad, he felt like, they were just boys, right? Because my dad is from the south side of Chicago and Coach K. And one thing when Coach K came to my house, he just didn't say, "Hey, we're going to give this to you." He really said, like, "Hey, you're going to have to work for everything you get." And my dad worked in a steel mill for 30 years.
Oh wow.
And his whole thing was more about work ethic. You have to outwork people every single day, no matter what you're doing.
Hmm.
And so for me, listening to Coach K from that standpoint of that you have to work for it and I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you to the point where you don't like me. And I felt that he would be the right coach for me. And I went to several schools, to Georgetown, with John Thompson there back at the time. Then I went to Stanford because I felt like Stanford was a great academic school. But when it came down to Duke, and Duke is a high academic school as well, I felt like it would fit me. There was something about it that was going to push me more to where I wanted to go. And I had an awesome time there, great experiences, but more importantly, and you know this, being from a coach's standpoint, you want players that will run through a wall for you and run through a wall for your teammates.
Hmm.
And that was one of the things that Coach K instilled in us, because every single player that was on our roster was a McDonald's All-American. Every
Yeah.
single player averaged 25 points a game. And so if you have all these different egos that are aligned, how are you going to get them all to find into line, follow into line?
Right.
And, from the West Point military background that Coach K had, it was like a drill sergeant being able to break down a lot of those egos that we had on our team in order for one common goal. And that is a hard task for a coach. It's a hard task for a player, because you're thinking that you want to do this and the coach is thinking something else. And you have to find a way to have those things have great synergy. And Coach K did a phenomenal job of having great synergy with the players on that team.
Yeah. Who else do you credit outside of, like, just say your father, about like the hard work and instilling that to motivate you to get to that level of just competing? And because you said you weren't into basketball, you were into other things. Like, who else did you have in your life that helped push you to those levels?
Well, I would say, Penny, it was my grandfather. He was one of my heroes besides my dad and my older brother. And those individuals, really, you just saw the hard work in them. My grandfather had a church in the area in Bellwood, right on the border of Maywood and Bellwood, and he ended up buying a laundromat and changing it into a church. And he said that he wanted to start, was changing clothes or washing, instead of washing clothes, we're going to be washing souls.
I like that.
It really, when I think about the journey that he had to do to be able to do that, he was driven off of the hard work that his family did back in Mississippi, picking cotton and all that. And he just knew how hard it was as an individual, as a black man at that time, trying to do things within that community. And he just felt like hard work was the best way to do it. The same way for my older brother, he pushed me to work harder when I was out there. Like, he had admirations to be a great basketball player, and then he got hurt. He got hit by a car one time, and then next time he was riding his bike, and he fell in a 9-foot ditch. It's like the
Wow.
craziest story ever, and he broke his leg twice. And so for him, he really tried to push me in all those sports. If it was baseball, if it was track, and then for basketball, he was the one that was unfiltered to push the limits for me. Like, hey, bro, it's not cutting it. You could do better. You could do better. And then from the standpoint of one of my childhood friends back in my AAU team, his dad's name was Mickey Hamano. They owned a company called Electro Wire at that time, and I saw the fact of this Asian family that basically came from nothing in order to build this astronomical wealth that they had. And you saw how they had great humility. They loved on a lot of those individuals around them, and they treated everyone the same. And so I had some great people around that really showed me how to be not only be a man, how to have great humility and respect for others. And I mean, I take that to heart. And that's not even including, my mom, who was at every single game for me
Right.
and showing me the love that I needed as a young student, a young man, because my dad could never go to any of my high school games. He
Oh,
never went to
wow.
any games. So my
Wow.
dad never went to any games. He went to one game when I went to Duke. One game. So his first game was that when I went to Duke. And then after that, when I went to the pros, he probably went to maybe five, and he was watching me on the tube. But before that, he's like, son, I don't have time, to watch your games. I have to provide for your family, And so I knew how important that was to him. And I knew how important it was for my mom being at the game, because she was an extension.
Yeah, that's love, man. That is an unbelievable story. All those different examples that you had that led you down the right path and taught you how to work hard. How did you use that going to Duke your first year? Because like you stated, you had all these other All-Americans on the team. Practice every day had to be knock down, drag out, man.
Sure. I would say, who really prepared me from a standpoint of training was Tim Grover. You know,
Shout out to
I have to
Tim.
give a lot of shout out to Tim, because Tim taught me how to be a hard worker. And so when I got to Duke, even though Duke was so hard from a training standpoint, I had a foundation. I had a foundation on how to work. I was able to watch Michael Jordan and how he worked. I was able to watch Scotty and these guys, Ron Harper and these guys, Tim Hardaway. These guys train in the way that they work. And so I'm like, well, if these guys are working at this level and I'm 20 years younger than them, I have to work even harder. I have to put in this hard work. And then, Iguodala, from Chicago, he said that, Corey would just, he's like the vigor guy. He's out there doing everything hard. And he said it in, Melo's podcast, and he said in his book, one of the guys that inspire him, how to be a hard worker. And I really, I admire that. I take that to heart, because I wanted people to see that I worked hard more than anything. And so that value of hard work on watching them individuals, Tim Grover always said, if you go out there and play the game the right way, things are going to happen for you. If you go out there and if you're half-assing it on the court, it's going to show. And so what I wanted to do is every single drill, I would rather die and pass out, than giving up on the basketball court. And so that's why I did every single thing at game speed. There was no moves. If it was sprints we had to do, I wasn't going to let anyone in that gym beat me at that. They would have to kill me before they can beat me in those drills. And so that's what I would say Tim Grover had, that push, which led to the unbelievable training and level of commitment that Coach K had for his players.
All right, let's take a break, and it's time for some dollars and cents. We're on the 2 Cents Podcast. We pick our 3 favorite games of the week. And don't forget, the Emirates Cup is on, and it's in full swing. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's our 3 that we're picking on this holiday week. On Friday, we love the full squad that the Grizzlies have back. They're at home. They're taking on the Pelicans. We're rolling with Memphis. On Saturday, the dynamic duo of Dame and Giannis are clicking. They're at home. They have Washington in town. We're riding with the Bucks. Also on Saturday, also the full squad, the dynamic trio in Phoenix is riding and rising up the standings. We're going with the Suns at home in a marquee matchup against Golden State. So there it is. Dollars and cents. Remember, you can score big with the DraftKings Sportsbook, where every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PENNY. That's code PENNY for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball.
Yeah, that's unreal, man. I've heard about your history with training. Explain the importance of training at full speed, because that's how I train my guys. Once you warm up, get your muscles loose, it's all full speed. Just talk about that.
You know what, Penny, man, and this is what kids they need to really know, and this is important, is that you can go in the gym every single day and you can shoot set shots. You can shoot 100 set shots. You could do some moves, everything at slow pace or a slow speed. But the game is never, ever played that way.
Nope.
The only place where you can actually slow down, focus, and have time to actually evaluate what your shooting is doing is only when you're at the free throw line.
Right.
Because you have 10 seconds to wait and evaluate, to rest, and be able to shoot. And so what I was taught was you need to do everything game speed, because the game is going to be that way. You're going to have players that will be extra aggressive on you as you're trying to get to your move, and you have to be able to simulate that as there was a player in front of you. Every single time I train, Penny, I simulate it like it was someone in front of me. I imagined that someone was in front of me that I needed to get past. It was that I was going to be physical, I was going to knock them out of the way, or I was going to go to the basket and try to dunk. And so the ability of you training at game speed, it prepares you for the games, not just for one game, it prepares you for the entire season. So when guys are basically tired because all of a sudden they have to run full speed down and back because of the flow of transition, you've already been conditioned to do that. And so that is the importance of making sure that you do everything game speed, because it's going to prepare you when the games happen.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I learned through, when I was younger, I trained with this boxer. And this boxer did everything full speed. He jogged miles, but when it came to doing everything else, it was full speed. When I got on the court, everything was full speed. And it's like you said, I always imagined someone guarding me and being able to make that move. And when you got in the game, it made it easier. It really did, because you were already at that level and everybody else wasn't. Yeah, so the mindset and the discipline that goes into the hours and the sacrifice and the dedication to your body. Tell me why.
You know what? I wanted to play, Penny. I wanted to play 20 years in the NBA. Just so happened I had, real bad knee injury that kind of caused me not to do that. But what I did, and this again, I got to give credit to Tim Grover, is that he said that you have to make your training a lifestyle thing. It's not a basketball thing. It is a lifestyle thing. And so there's a lot of guys that this that have played this game at the highest level, and when you see them now, they're unrecognizable because they've gained so much weight, and because of that. And so for me, I looked at it like all right, I see Reggie Miller or I see Ray Allen, and I see these guys, and I know, or Rip Hamilton, that these guys will bike all the time, 20 miles biking, and they stayed in shape.
Yep.
All the time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, man, I have to find a way to make sure I'm doing that. So every off season I trained, I did things different in the off season. It was never just about basketball. If it was boxing, if it was out like doing soccer, I was doing so many different things in order to keep my body in shape for preparation when I was done to retire, when I was going to retire. So I utilized, life after basketball and using that training as a lifestyle, because I knew someday, in my mid-30s that I was going to retire. And you're not going to be burning, 4,000 calories a day that we usually would burn on practice times or games. And so I found out, like, all right, how can I simulate this the right way? I need to make sure that I'm eating smarter, right? You're not eating as much food as you would eat during your season.
Yeah.
So I literally found the science to doing that. And I let the gym be, my new best friend. Like I said, I'm here a lifetime right now doing this podcast.
Right.
And I felt like I wanted to be an example for people, once they retire, even when you have some significant injuries that, that it slows you down, you still can have a great representation of how you're taking care of your body. And so, if you saw me, on the court or from up in the weight room, you would swear that I'm in my 20s. And so I have used it as a lifestyle. I train with a guy right now, man, he's 72 years old.
Wow.
And and he has been, so inspirational to me, how hard this guy trained. He's a 70-year-old, and this dude is benching and squatting what I do now. And it kind of
Wow.
pissed me off. I'm like, man, I know I'm stronger than this guy, but
Yeah.
just what he's doing, and he has used that lifestyle for the last 30 years of his life as making training part of it because, health is wealth, right? And
Yeah.
so you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your health, then it's nothing. And so
Right.
I just took that to heart and making sure that, from a fitness standpoint, from an eating standpoint, that I'm doing everything right to keep my body as healthy as possible.
So just to ask you this question, because there's going to be a young man or an older man out here looking at this podcast. Mostly, we'll just say a young man, and he wants to be just like Corey Maggette, but his friends are shaming him because he wants to be in shape. He wants to do everything game speed. He wants to go hard at everything, and then they're shaming him, and he starts getting a little complex about doing it. What words would you have for him?
You know what, Penny? And that's hard because we're in a society now that you get mocked even more with social media, more than anything than when we're in our eras. And the one thing that I would say is that if you're trying to accomplish something in which your goals, somebody is going to think you're crazy.
Yep.
Somebody is going to think that you're a little bit off. And the greatest players that's ever played this game, they have done something different. They have separated themselves from everyone else. The separation allows you to breed success. The separation allows you to breed what? Common sense. And so when you're able to do that, you're able to block out a lot of that noise. And so for me, saying this to you is that you cannot worry about what everyone else is going to say. If you're trying to accomplish a goal that you set for yourself, it is going to be different. It's not going to be the same. People are going to look at you different.
Yep.
But when it comes to that finish line, you're going to be able to see the results and the fruits of your labor down the line. And this is happening through, you look at all the greatest and the most wealthiest people on this planet. They've been individuals that maybe have been in their room or on a computer, and they have built billion-dollar, companies because of that. And it's the same thing with players. Players, they hibernate. Kobe Bryant, probably, I've seen one of the greatest that he hibernated. He didn't care what anyone else thought about him. You remember Kobe only averaged 7 points a game his first year, shot an air ball, and people could have said, oh man, he was the worst player. Why did they pick this young kid? But just imagine if he would have truly listened to that information and not have the drive to push forward, he would have never been the player that we've been able to model and to see. So you can't worry about what everyone else thinks because everyone has an opinion, but not everybody has the drive and the greatness to be great.
That's right. Not everybody has that. God gave us all a gift, but not everybody has that passion to drive to go get it. What He gave us. Sometimes you got to bring it out of yourself. It's not just going to happen. So, I do know that mental health is real, and we do have a lot of young people out there that are thinking real dangerously because of people shaming them into different things. So, I just wanted you to speak on that because there are a lot of people that are down, and we're just trying to give them some inspiration. So, I definitely appreciate your explanation on that. Jumping now to where you are, because you told me now you're with the Clippers, the radio, team. And tell me, how is it different now than what it was when you were as a player being in that organization?
Well, I feel like they have made some great changes to change the team. The first owner, Donald Sterling, and Donald Sterling in the beginning that he never wanted to pay any individuals on the team, so we trade him off. And he at that time he was probably one of the most successful owners because he just used it the right way from a business structure. And now the Clippers in a position where they, Steve Ballmer bought the team, and Steve Ballmer has excelled more than anything, where the Clippers are in a position where people wanted to be there. I mean, this, Penny, better than anybody else, is that nobody wanted to play with the Clippers, right? No
No,
one wanted to
no
be
one
there,
did.
right? And matter of fact, if most people probably didn't even know who the Clippers were, they just knew the Lakers.
Yeah.
And so they have really found a way to find their own identity. They have their new arena called the Intuit Dome. And so on my journey for this, when I started doing TV, it was because I loved the game and because I couldn't play, right?
Right.
The knee injury slowed me down. And so I went into TV, and TV was the one thing that kept me as close as possible to this game, to talk about the things that I love and how that I can actually learn from some of the coaches. And we know as players at times, we are the most selfish people on the planet.
Right.
And we have these personal blind spots that we cannot see. And that's why they're coaches, right? And so now when I moved into the TV side, there were times that I'm like, wow, this is what the coaches were talking about, because you're looking at it from an analyst standpoint. And so for me being an analyst, it allowed me to see the game a different way, but also maximize the love that I have, and to be with a team that I was with my longest in my career, over 8 years with the Clippers, and to do their network.
Healthy Corey Maggette in this era. What do you see yourself in this era right now? Healthy Corey Maggette just coming out of Duke right now. 100% healthy.
100% healthy, there probably won't be one player that could outwork me.
I would definitely second that. Just looking at this basketball in today's time, I'm enjoying it. Are you enjoying how everybody's 5 out, everybody's out on the perimeter, the bigs are shooting threes? Is that more fun for you to see, or would you like some of the old school to come back?
You know what? And I'm gonna just take you a little bit back to when you played, because you were totally different than everyone else, because you were over 6'7", right? And you were a PG, very similar to how Magic Johnson. And so now we're able to see guys that probably were, fours or fives, are able to be threes. And it's been a great change in what the game has been able. I actually love the way the game is going, because you can watch some old clips and you'll see that the rules that were supposed to be the standard rules in the game, they weren't the same for you guys. Even like the
Right.
Euro step, you guys, for you back doing those Euro steps and moves, you're able to see guys now to mimic it even more.
Yeah.
And so the ability for guys to watch players up close, even closer than we used to do back in the day, you see that they have expanded in their creativity. Not saying that the creativity back when we played wasn't great. They have just took it to another level of the creativity, because the game of basketball has changed, from a game standpoint, but even more from an economic standpoint as well.
Yeah. Do you ever want to go into coaching in the NBA, or ownership, or general manager, or anything like that in the
Well,
future?
so what I did, Penny, when I first retired, I went and worked for the NBA for 2 years in basketball operations,
Okay.
just so I can learn the nuance of the game. And being from a player where it's a surreal lifestyle for us when you're playing, and understand what it takes to be in the NBA and how the teams work. And I thought about that, and I went to Utah, about 3 or 4 years ago. Did that as from a coaching standpoint in the
Okay.
summer. And in 2015, I took ownership with Tony Parker with his team in Lyon, France, as well as Michael Finley. So I've tried to put my hat in a lot of different areas, to see what I'm really passionate about. I'm just passionate about the game, and I want to continue to be a sponge. I love being on the court. It's probably my biggest passion, because I'm still able and physically able to be able to do it. And I enjoy that part. I can get out, the coach say, hey, we need you to be an extra 5. I can go out there and do it. So I really love that ability too, but also the opportunity to talk to players, early on, what you talk about, even from a mental standpoint, from a mentorship standpoint, because we all need that, right? Because players go through so much every single day. That's why, for the general public, they don't think that, millionaire players have mental issues, or they don't have anxiety or those things. We go through the same exact
Yes,
things that everyone else goes through.
exactly.
And we are probably the greatest mimickers, where we can actually mask all of those things and just go out there and play. And so I've been a component of using, my voice in that, far as mentorship, or where am I seeing from a coaching standpoint, or what I can do to show players, on the court. For me, I was really good at getting at the foul line. And
Yep.
so I have a knack learning from Grant Hill. When Grant Hill was out, with his ankle injury, I actually flew down to Florida when I was this is my first or second year, and worked with Grant every single day, not only to help him, but he was helping me, like how to use the left to right crossover to get into contact. And then using, Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace, he's a Hall of Famer right now.
Yep.
And Ben was teaching me how to be the best person in the weight room. And that gave me another passion to be the best in shape. So I had like these great people along this journey to help me, so I'm able to pass this information along to all those kids.
Yeah, and shout out to G Hill and Ben Wallace. Congratulations to Big Ben for getting into the Hall of Fame. Well deserved, bro. He definitely got it out the mud. Before I let you go, man, I definitely want to salute you for your love and dedication to yourself and your life as a professional. It seems like you do wear a lot of hats. You're still helping so many different people, which is a credit to you for just always wanting to give back. And I definitely appreciate you coming on My 2 Cent podcast, man. This was special. If you ever need anything from me, I'm here for you, man. But I definitely appreciate you coming on today.
Man, Penny, man, you were one of my favorite players growing
I
up,
appreciate it.
and to have the pleasure of like knowing your dad, and then being able to have this chance to talk to you has been the best. As a kid, all of my buddies wanted to wear the pennies,
Nah.
and so I'm hoping that I can get a pair of 14s and
I'm
some
wearing 14, so
15.
you're good.
My
All of that.
son wear 14s. So listen, I'm gonna have to get some of those.
Yeah, no doubt, man. But again, brother, thank you so much. Continued success with the Clippers and everything that you have going.
Thank
you
you.
again on my 2 Cents podcast. Corey Maggette. He's at the weight room, folks. He's about to go work out. Peace.